The Aegis ring was quiet. It was the deep, humming quiet of a machine that never slept. Outside the wide viewport, the blue and white marble of Earth turned slowly. Inside, the air was still and cool. Cadet Kim Ji-woo stood at the entrance to the main training deck. Her transfer orders were a light pulse on her wristcom. She was late. Her shuttle from the surface had been delayed by a debris check. Now, she had to report directly to the orientation drill. She took a breath and walked in. The training deck was huge. It was a wide, white room with high ceilings. Lines of cadets stood in perfect rows. They wore the uniform of the Aegis Ring Academy. It was a sleek, gray jumpsuit. On their feet were magnetized boots. The boots were glossy black, with blue lights along the soles. They were designed for zero-gravity work. They looked new and expensive. Ji-woo's uniform was the same gray, but it was a different make. It was thicker, rougher. It had a faded patch on the shoulder from the United Earth Ground Forces. And on her feet, she wore her old boots. They were heavy combat boots, made of scuffed brown composite. The left one had a long, white scrape along the toe. The right one's lace was a different color. A dark green replaced the original black. The soles were worn almost smooth in places. They were meant for mud and rock and long walks. They were very loud on the polished floor of the Aegis ring. A soft wave of whispers moved through the cadets. Heads turned. Eyes moved from her face down to her boots and back up. Ji-woo kept her gaze straight ahead. She found the instructor, a tall woman with perfect posture, and saluted. Cadet Kim Ji-woo, reporting, Instructor Park. Instructor Park looked her over. Her eyes paused on the boots. Her mouth became a thin line. You are late, cadet. Join the third row. Yes, ma'am. Ji-woo walked to the third row. The cadets made space for her. She felt their looks. She did not look back. She stood at attention. Her boots felt solid on the floor. They were the most comfortable thing she owned. Today, Instructor Park said, her voice clear and sharp, is a microgravity combat simulation. You will enter the chamber in pairs. Your goal is to secure the data core in the center of the room. The system will simulate random gravity failures. You must adapt. She began calling names. The first pairs went. They moved into the glass-walled chamber. The gravity inside switched off. The cadets pushed off from the walls. They floated. Their mag boots glowed as they stuck to surfaces. They moved with practiced, floating grace. It looked like a dance. Ji-woo watched. Her hands were loose at her sides. She had done this before, but not in a room so clean. Kim Ji-woo and Lee Jun. Instructor Park called. Ji-woo stepped forward. From the front row, a cadet stepped out. Lee Jun. He was the kind of cadet who looked like he was made for this place. His uniform had no creases. His hair was perfectly cut. He had a confident, easy smile. He glanced at Ji-woo and his smile faded for a second. He looked at her boots. One of his eyebrows went up just a little. Then he nodded at her. A polite, empty nod. They entered the chamber. The door sealed with a hiss. Gravity disengagement in 3, 2, 1. The feeling of the floor vanished.
Evo's stomach lifted.
She bent her knees slightly. She was used to this. On her left, June pushed off from the wall with a gentle tap. He floated towards the center of the room, where a glowing blue data core hung in the air. Ji-woo did not push off. Instead, she turned and placed a hand on the wall. She gave a short, firm push. She moved faster than June, in a straight line. It was not graceful. It was direct. A warning light flashed. Gravity shift, a robotic voice said. Suddenly, gravity returned, but from the wrong direction. It was now pulling them towards the ceiling. June was in the middle of the air. He twisted his body and tapped his mag boots. They glowed and he landed neatly on the ceiling. Now his floor. Ji-woo was closer to the wall. The shift made her drop towards the ceiling too. She did not try to land on her feet. She turned and took the impact on her shoulder, rolling with the momentum. She came up in a crouch. Her boots made a loud clunk on the metal ceiling. June was already moving towards the core. Ji-woo saw a better path. A console was sticking out from the wall. She jumped from the ceiling, grabbed the console, and used it to swing herself forward like she was climbing. She moved in quick, sure grabs and pushes. She did not float. She climbed through the shifting gravity. June reached the core first. He tapped the surface. A red light glowed. Core secured. The voice announced. The simulation ended. Gravity normalized, pulling them to the main floor. They walked out of the chamber. June was not even breathing hard. He gave Instructor Park a sharp salute. Core secured, ma'am. Efficient, Cadet June. Your control is excellent. June nodded. He fell back in line with his friends. As Jiwoo walked past them to her spot, she heard his voice, low but clear. Did you see that? Like watching a cargo bot try to dance. A soft chuckle from the others. And those boots. I think my grandfather had a pair. For gardening. Jiwoo did not turn. She did not change her expression. She took her place in the third row. She looked straight ahead. Inside her old boots, her toes curled once, then relaxed. She knew this sound. It was the sound of a world that had never been broken, laughing at the things that tried to fix it. The drill continued. Jiwoo did not hear the other names. She felt the solid weight of her boots on the deck. She thought of mud and how it felt to pull your foot free with a suck and a pop. She thought of cold rock and how a good sole kept you from slipping. This place was so quiet, so clean. It didn't know what real noise was. When the session ended, the cadets filed out. Jiwoo was last. As she walked past the observation window, she saw an older man in a sergeant's uniform standing there. He wasn't looking at the empty chamber. He was looking at her. His eyes were on her boots. He had a tired, lined face. He didn't smile. He just gave a small, almost invisible nod. Then he turned and walked away. Jiwoo walked to her new quarters. The halls of the Aegis Ring were long and bright. Every surface shone. Her boots were the only dirty thing in the whole station. They left faint scuff marks on the perfect floor. She did not try to walk softly. She just walked. One heavy, solid step after another. The gap between Jiwoo and the other cadets was not a simple line. It was a deep canyon, and it was built from different things. The Aegis Ring taught one kind of war. Jiwoo had learned another. Her troubles started in the classroom. It was a large room with smart walls that showed maps of the solar system. Instructor Park taught politico-military strategy. She talked about resource treaties on Ceres. She talked about the diplomatic pressure points around the Martian freehold. Jiwoo sat in the back. She tried to listen. The words were clear, but they felt like clouds. They were ideas about war. They were about winning before a shot was fired. They were about looking strong and clean. June was in the front. He asked sharp questions. If the Titanian factions are using trade as a weapon, shouldn't our first response be an orbital embargo? It's a precise tool. Instructor Park agreed. Precision is key, Cadet June. Minimum force for maximum effect. War is a failure of politics. Our job is to be the perfect threat. Jiwoo looked down at her hands. They were rough. She remembered the dust of Taiko City. It wasn't about precise tools. It was about a block of apartments that was there 1 minute and gone the next. It was about finding water for the children hiding in the basement. There was no politics in the dust. There was only alive and dead. Later, they had systems training. They learned to operate the new Mark 7 command consoles. The screens had 20 different feeds. There were communication channels, drone controls, threat assessments. June's fingers flew over the controls. He could track 5 conversations at once. He could deploy a surveillance drone with 3 taps. Jiwoo's screen was a mess of light. She was slow. She had to search for each command. On the ground, her comms unit had 3 buttons. Talk, listen, and emergency. She missed it. Try to keep up, Cadet Kim, the tech instructor said, not unkindly, but with a hint of frustration. The system does the thinking for you. You just have to guide it.
Jiwoo nodded silently.
She did not say that on the ground the system was often broken. The thinking had to be done in your own head, with your own eyes. The other cadets saw her struggle. The whispers about her boots turned into whispers about her mind. They thought she was slow. They thought the ground forces had sent them someone outdated, like her boots. Then came the simulation. It was called planetary evacuation, hostile environment. The scenario was this: a science outpost on a moon was under attack from rebel militia. The cadets were a rescue team. Their job was to get the scientists to the evacuation ship. They were in the full simulator. It was a large room with projectors on all sides. The screens came to life. They showed a rocky moon landscape. The sky was black. A small outpost was ahead. Red laser fire came from a ridge. June was the team leader. Okay. His voice came through the helmet comms. Standard sweep pattern. Drone up first to mark targets. Suppressing fire on my mark. Move fast, move clean. The team moved forward. They moved from rock to rock. It was perfect. The drone flew up. It marked 2 gun positions on the ridge. June gave the order. Suppress. The team fired. Their simulated rifles made low buzzing sounds. The gun positions on the ridge went quiet. Advance to the outpost. They ran to the building. Jiwoo was at the back watching the sides. Her heart was beating in a slow, heavy rhythm. It was too quiet. The attack was too easy. They got the scientists out. For people in white suits. They started moving back across the open ground to where the evacuation ship was waiting. They were halfway there when Jiwoo saw it. A glint on a higher ridge, far to the left. A place the drone had not looked. Ambush, she said, her voice flat on the comms. What? The drone sweep was clear. June started from the high ridge, a heavy weapon fired. Not lasers, a simulated projectile cannon. It was the kind rebels used because it was cheap and it broke things. The first shell hit the ground in front of them. Dirt and rock exploded on the screens. One cadet was marked down by the system. A scientist screamed. Return fire, June yelled. He aimed at the ridge. But their rifles were for close range. The ridge was too far. Another shell hit closer. Another cadet went down. The scientists were panicking, running in different directions. June was trying to give orders. But the plan was broken. The clean sweep was now a mess of noise and dirt. Jiwoo stopped looking at the ridge. She looked at the land. There was a deep, narrow crack in the rock to the right. A runoff channel. Follow me, she said. She did not ask. She grabbed the arm of the closest scientist and started running. Not back to the ship. Away from it towards the crack. Kim, that's away from the extract. June shouted. They're zeroed on the extract path, she said, her voice hard. This channel. It leads around. It's cover. It was not what the book said. It was retreat. It was not clean. But the other cadets, seeing no choice, followed her. They pushed the scientists into the crack in the rock. They crouched down. The shells exploded behind them, hitting the open ground where they had just been. They moved through the narrow, dark channel. They came out behind a rock formation. The evacuation ship was on the other side. They were safe. The simulation ended. The screens went blank. The lights came up. The cadets took off their helmets. Their faces were sweaty. June's face was tight with anger. He walked up to Jiwoo. What was that? He asked. You broke formation. You disobeyed the order to advance to extraction. You were advancing into a kill zone, Jiwoo said. She was taking off her simulation gear. Her movements were slow and tired. Our intelligence said the ridge was clear. Your intelligence was wrong, she said. She looked at him. Her eyes were dark and flat. It often is. Instructor Park came over. She had watched everything. Cadet Kim, your actions saved the unit. That is good. But your method, it was reactive. It was not control. It was survival. Jiwoo said nothing. What was the difference? June shook his head. He turned to his friends, his voice low but loud enough to hear. Survival isn't a strategy. It's just luck. And you can't build a career on being lucky. You need discipline. You need to follow the system. He walked away. The other cadets followed. They looked at Jiwoo not with anger, but with a kind of pity. She was a creature from a different, uglier world. She didn't understand how things were done here. In the clean, bright future. Jiwoo put her gear away. She felt the old weight in her boots. Survival wasn't a strategy. It was the only thing. Everything else was just talk before the lights went out. She walked back to her quarters alone, her steps the only sound in the shining hall. The canyon between her and them had just gotten wider, and no one on the other side even knew its name. It was the final live drill before their first real assessment. A high-altitude orbital drop onto the Academy's main asteroid training surface. The asteroid was small, airless, and scarred with simulated craters and terrain. The goal was simple: drop in, secure a mock enemy communications array, and signal for extraction. Jiwoo suited up in the ready room. Her pressure suit was another ground forces model. It was bulkier than the sleek Academy suits, with more manual seals and less glowing trim. She checked her systems one by one, a slow, methodical habit. June and his squad were already done, their checks a rapid, synchronized routine. They looked like a team. Jiwoo was a piece of old equipment that had been added to the group at the last minute. Sergeant Minsu was the overseeing instructor. He moved through the room, not saying much, just watching. His eyes passed over Jiwoo's careful hands on her oxygen regulator and paused for a moment. He gave no sign of approval or disapproval. He just watched. Listen up. Instructor Park's voice came over the comms. This is a live environment.
No gravity, no atmosphere.
Your suits are your lives. Stick to the drop plan, secure the objective, and maintain comms discipline. We'll be monitoring from the ring. Good luck. They boarded the drop pod. It was a cramped, rounded capsule with 4 seats. Jiwoo was paired with June, Sumin, and another cadet named Tae. Sumin gave Jiwoo a small, nervous smile. Tae looked straight ahead. June took the command seat by default. All right, June said, his voice confident in their helmet comms. Simple in and out. The array is in crater beta. We drop, we march, we plant the charge, we call for pickup. Clear? Clear, said Tae. Clear? Whispered Sumin. Jiwoo just nodded, checking the seal on her glove. The pod detached from the Aegis ring with a heavy clunk. Suddenly, they were falling. The small window showed the asteroid growing larger, a gray, lumpy rock against the black of space. It was a quiet, dizzying fall. Brace for landing, June said. The pod's thrusters fired, slowing them down. They hit the surface with a jolt that rattled their teeth. The door hissed open. Cold, airless silence greeted them. The only sound was their own breathing in their helmets. The asteroid's landscape was a field of gray dust and sharp rocks under a stark, sunlit sky. The stars were hard, bright points. They moved out. June took point, his mag boots gripping the dust with a soft blue glow at each step. Their plan was to go around a large rock formation called the Ridge. It was the longer route, but it was in the manual as the safe approach. They were halfway there when Jiwoo felt it first. A low vibration through the soles of her boots. Not through the suit's sensors, but through the old composite itself, a physical tremor. Stop, she said. June paused. What is it? Listen. Feel. They all stood still. For a second, there was nothing. Then, Tae said, my suit is picking up a minor seismic tremor. Probably just a small asteroid settling. It's getting stronger, Jiwoo said. Before June could reply, the ground beneath them shook. Not a small tremor. A sharp, violent jerk. From behind the ridge, a cloud of gray dust billowed up into the vacuum, silent and slow. A rock slide. Sumin cried out. The ridge is unstable. Their comms crackled. Instructor Park's voice, tense. Cadets, we're seeing a significant collapse on the east face of the ridge. Are you clear? We're clear of the slide zone, June reported, his voice tight. But our planned path is blocked. We need a new route to the objective. Replot and proceed. Maintain comms. June brought up the map on his wrist display. We'll cut south, through the dust flats. It's open ground, but we can make good time. Jiwoo looked at the map on her own simpler screen. The flats have no cover. If the slide triggered any other instability, or if we have a suit issue, we're exposed. There's a canyon here. She pointed to a thin, jagged line on the map to the north. It's narrower, more shelter. It comes out near the crater. It's not on the approved approach list, June said, frustrated. It's a grade 5 crevice. The manual says to avoid. The manual didn't know the ridge would fall today, Jiwoo said, her voice calm. We follow the procedure, June insisted. The flats are the logical choice. We stick to the plan. He started moving south. After a second's hesitation, Tae and Sumin followed him. Jiwoo stood for a moment. She looked at the cloud of dust still hanging in the air. She looked at the smooth, open expanse of the dust flats. Her instincts, honed in places where the ground could betray you, screamed. She turned and started walking north, toward the jagged line of the canyon. Kim, what are you doing? June's voice was sharp in her ear. Taking the canyon. That's direct disobedience. Get back in formation. Jiwoo kept walking. Her heavy boots kicked up little puffs of dust. Pod team, this is Instructor Park. Cadet Kim, comply with your team leader's order immediately. Jiwoo opened her mouth to reply, but a new, more terrible sound cut through the comms. It was a high-pitched screech of metal, followed by a deep, shuddering groan that vibrated through all their suits. Then, June's voice, filled with real panic. The pod! Look! They all turned. In the distance where they had landed, the ground had shifted. A large crack had opened up right under their drop pod. The pod tilted. Then, in the slow, graceful fall of low gravity, toppled over into the crevasse with a final, silent crash. A cloud of dust swallowed it. Their way home was gone. The comms erupted with static, then went dead silent. Not a crackle, not a voice. Just empty, hollow noise. Instructor Park? Control? Do you read? June's voice was rising. Comms are down. The pod is gone. The reality of the situation settled on them, colder than the vacuum. They were stranded.
No comms. No pod.
On an airless rock, with limited air and power in their suits. June was breathing hard. Okay. They saw the pod go down. They'll send a rescue. We just have to stay here, by the flats, where they can see us. They didn't just see the pod go down. Jiwoo's voice cut through his panic. It was still flat, still calm. They saw a major seismic event. Their first priority will be checking the ring's own stability. Rescue could be hours. Our suit oxygen is calculated for the drill, not a weight. What's your brilliant idea then? June snapped. Your canyon? It leads to Crater Beta. The objective. There's a hardened relay station there for the array. It has an emergency beacon, a stronger signal. We can activate it. It's 20 kilometers away in that terrain. Tae said, his voice shaky. Yes, Jiwoo said. She looked at them, her face pale behind her visor. So we should start walking. She turned and began moving, step by heavy step, towards the dark slash of the canyon in the distance. For a long moment, the other three just watched her go. She looked small and absurd against the huge, empty landscape, a lone figure in a bulky suit heading toward a crack in the world. June looked from the empty comms channel to the distant, buried pod, to Jiwoo's retreating back. His perfect plan was dust. His procedure was useless. A deep, cold fear was tightening around his chest. He had never felt so helpless, with a curse that echoed only in his own helmet. He took a step, then another. He began to follow her. Sumin and Tae, with no other choice, fell in behind him. They were not a team. They were just 4 people, alone on a rock, following a pair of old, tattered boots towards a tiny slit of shadow. The only sound was the rasp of their own breath and the soft, steady crunch of Jiwoo's footsteps ahead. The walk to the canyon was silent except for the sound of their breathing. June's mind was racing. He was trying to calculate oxygen usage, distance, the probability of another quake. The numbers were bad. He kept looking back, hoping to see a rescue shuttle against the stars. He saw only the empty gray plane and the distant dust cloud where their pod had been. Jiwoo did not look back. She walked with a steady, plodding rhythm. Her eyes were on the ground ahead, reading the rock. They reached the edge of the canyon. It was a deep, dark crack in the asteroid's skin. The top was about 4 meters wide. The bottom was lost in shadow. The walls were jagged. "This is insane," Tay said, his voice thin. "We can't climb down there in these suits." "We're not climbing," Jiwoo said. She walked along the edge, looking down. After about 50 meters, she stopped. "Here." The others caught up. At this spot, the canyon was wider. A massive slab of rock had fallen from one side long ago, creating a rough, sloping ramp down into the darkness. "It's unstable," June said, his training kicking in. "That slab could shift." "Everything out here is unstable," Jiwoo replied. She didn't wait for permission. She started down. She didn't walk like she was on a ramp. She moved like she was crossing a frozen river. Each step was placed carefully, testing the ground before putting her full weight on it. She used her hands on the rock wall for balance. Her boots, with their worn but grippy soles, found purchase on the dusty stone. Halfway down, her left foot slipped on some loose gravel. She dropped to one knee, her hand slapping against the rock to stop her slide. June's breath caught, but she just got back up, brushed the dust from her knee, and kept going. She reached the bottom and looked up, a small pale face in her helmet. "Come down one at a time. Go slow. Don't follow directly behind the person in front. The dust they kick up is slick." One by one, they followed. Sumin was crying quietly, the tears floating in her helmet before being sucked away by the suit system. Tay was stiff with fear. June was last, his mind still screaming that this was wrong. But he went. The canyon floor was covered in a fine, deep dust. Came up to their ankles. June's first step into it was a shock. His mag boot sank in and stuck. The system whined, trying to adjust. He had to pull his foot free with a hard tug. Jiwoo was already moving ahead. Her boots didn't have magnetic grips. They were just tough soles and strong leather. They went into the dust and came out. They left deep, clear prints. They did not stick. "Keep moving," she said. "Don't stop in the deep parts." The canyon was cold and dark. The sky was just a sliver of light high above them. Their suit lights cut through the gloom, making long, jumping shadows. They walked. The only sound was their breathing, the soft crunch of boots on rock, and the annoying, occasional whine from June's or Tay's mag boots as they tried to clear the dust. After an hour, Sumin spoke, her voice small. "My suit. My oxygen reading is at 50%. "Mine too," Tay said, a new panic in his voice. "Conserve," June said, trying to sound like he was in control. "Breathe slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth." Jiwoo didn't say anything about her oxygen. She just kept walking. Her pace never changed. They came to a place where the canyon walls pressed in close. The path was narrow, only wide enough for one person. On the left side, the wall was smooth and dark. On the right, it was a mess of broken, sharp rocks. Jiwoo stopped. She looked at the smooth wall, then at the rocky one. She picked up a loose stone from the ground. She threw it at the smooth, dark wall. The stone did not bounce off. It stuck. Then it slowly began to slide downward, leaving a faint, wet-looking trail. "What is that?" Sumin whispered. "Ice," Jiwoo said. "Water ice. In the shadow, it never melts. It's like glass. If you slip and hit it, your suit tears." She turned to the jagged wall. "This side is safer, but you have to be careful. Don't let the sharp rocks snag your suit. Go sideways like this." She showed them. She turned her body and began to shuffle along the narrow path, her back against the sharp rocks. She moved slowly, feeling behind her for the worst points. Her old suit scraped against the stone, but the thicker material held. June watched, a bitter taste in his mouth. This wasn't in any manual. This was some primitive, fearful crawl. But he did it. They all did. The sharp rocks snagged at their sleeker suits. Tay got a long scratch across his chest plate. He stared at it, his eyes wide, as if waiting for the air to rush out. It held past the narrows, the canyon opened up again. They were all tired. The fear and the walking were using up their energy, and their air. June's head was starting to hurt. A low throb behind his eyes. Too much carbon dioxide. The suit scrubbers were working hard. He looked at Jiwoo. She was still just walking. Step, step, step. Her boots rising and falling in the dust. He felt a sudden, hot anger. "How are you so calm?" he burst out. The words echoed in the quiet canyon. Jiwoo didn't stop. "Being loud uses more oxygen. We're going to die out here. Don't you get that? Your stupid canyon, your stupid walk. It's just delaying it." Finally, she stopped. She turned to look at him. In the light from his helmet, her face was all shadows and hard lines. "Then stop," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through his anger. "Sit down. Wait, maybe they will come." She looked at the other two. "You can stop too. It's a choice." No one moved. No one wanted to be left alone. Jiwoo nodded, as if that was the answer she expected. "The ice back there," she said, starting to walk again. "On Mars, in the Tharsis caves. It's like that. Colder. You have to cross it sometimes. You learn how." She said it like she was talking about walking to a store, not a war zone on another planet. They walked on. The canyon began to slope upward. The light from above got brighter. They were coming to the end. Jiwoo reached the slope first. It was steep and covered in loose scree. She started up. Her boots slipped on the small stones. She went down to her hands and knees. She began to climb, not walk, digging her boots into the slope, using her gloves to pull herself up. It was ugly. It was animal. June looked at his own clean, sophisticated gloves. He looked at the slope. He got down on his hands and knees and followed. They crawled out of the canyon, one after the other, onto a flat, rocky plain. They were covered in gray dust. Their suits were scratched. They lay on their backs for a moment, just breathing the recycled, thinning air. Jiwoo stood up first. She pointed. Ahead, about 5 kilometers away, was the raised rim of Crater Beta. "There," she said. Her voice was tired now, too. "The relay station is on the near side. We can see it from the top." She didn't say they were saved. She just stated the next objective. Step, step, step. June pushed himself up. Every part of him ached. He looked at her dirty, scarred boots planted firmly on the rock. For the first time, he didn't see something old and useless. He saw the only thing that had worked all day. And he felt a shame so deep it was colder than the vacuum around them. He had been wrong. About everything. And his wrongness was a luxury they could no longer afford. All they could do was follow those boots wherever they were going. The plain between the canyon and the crater rim was the hardest ground yet. It was not smooth. It was a field of broken rock, pieces as big as a chair, all thrown together as if by a giant. They had to climb over them. Every step was a lift, a balance, a drop. Jiwoo moved through it like it was a puzzle she had solved before. She didn't go over the biggest rocks. She found the paths around them. She tested rocks with her foot before putting her weight on them. If it wobbled, she stepped away. June tried to copy her. His body was tired. His mind was foggy from the bad air. He slipped. A rock turned under his mag boot. He fell forward, his hands hitting the sharp stone. A jolt of pain shot up his wrist. He lay there for a second, the rough rock against his visor. "Get up." Jiwoo's voice was in his ear. It was not gentle. It was not mean. It was just a fact. "If you stay down, you won't get up again." He pushed himself up. His glove was torn. He could see the sealed lining underneath. He looked at Jiwoo's gloves. They were scratched white in places, but they were whole. Sumin was struggling the most. Her smaller frame was having trouble with the climbs. She was breathing in short, sharp gasps. "I can't," she whimpered. Stuck on top of a flat rock, afraid to jump down, Jiwoo walked back. She didn't offer a hand. "You can. Turn around. Lower yourself. Feel with your foot. It's not far."
I'm scared.
"We're all scared," Jiwoo said, her voice still that flat, calm tone. "Do it scared. Sumin cried, but she did it. She lowered herself down. Her foot found the ground. They kept going, step by step. Rock by rock. Tay's suit was the first to have a real problem. The scratch from the canyon wall had been deeper than he thought. A small alarm began to beep on his wrist panel. A tiny, flashing red light. Pressure drop, he said, his voice high with terror. I have a slow leak. My suit is losing air. June's training rushed back. Patch kit. Do you have a patch kit? Tay fumbled at his belt. His fingers were clumsy. He dropped the small kit. It bounced on a rock. Jiwoo was there. She picked it up. Where is the leak? The scratch. On the chest. Jiwoo looked at the long, thin scratch. She didn't use the prepared seal from the kit. Instead, she took out the small roll of thick, gray repair tape. She tore a strip with her teeth. She smoothed the tape over the scratch, rubbing it hard with her gloved thumb to warm the adhesive. She put another strip across it. Then a third. The beeping stopped. The red light went out. It's not pretty, Jiwoo said, but it will hold. If we get back. Tay stared at the ugly gray patch on his beautiful white suit. He nodded, unable to speak. June watched her work. She hadn't panicked. She hadn't consulted a manual. She had just fixed it. With tape, the oldest technology in the world. They reached the base of the crater rim. It was a steep hill of loose, sliding dust and stone. The relay station was at the top. They could see a small metal structure against the stars. Up there, Jiwoo said, looking at the slope. It will slide. We go straight up, fast as you can. If you stop, you slide back. She didn't wait. She started up. Her boots sank deep into the dust. She leaned forward, almost on her hands again, and climbed. The dust flowed around her boots like dark water. June followed. He took one step up. His mag boot tried to grip nothing. The dust gave way. He slid back half a step for every step up. It was like a nightmare. He was working so hard and going nowhere. Jiwoo was pulling ahead. Her boots were better for this. The flat, worn soles acted like paddles, pushing against the deep dust. They didn't fight it. They used it. June looked down at his own boots. The blue lights were dim, covered in gray filth. They were useless here. A fancy tool for a clean floor, broken by the real world. He felt a scream building in his throat. He was so tired, so afraid. The headache was a drumbeat in his skull. He wanted to lie down. Then he saw Jiwoo stop. She was halfway up. She turned and looked back at him. At all of them. She didn't speak. She just waited. She was giving them a point to aim for. A smaller goal. Not the top. Just to her. June focused on her boots. Just get to the boots. He dug in. He stopped trying to use the magnets. He just climbed. He used his hands. He crawled like an animal, like she did. He reached her. He was gasping. The world was spots in front of his eyes. Look up, she said. Not down. Just at the next rock. They climbed the rest of the way like that, one piece of rock at a time. When June finally pulled himself over the top, onto flat ground, he thought he might be sick. His whole body was shaking. They were at the relay station. It was a small, dome-shaped metal hut. Jiwoo went to the door. There was a manual release handle. She pulled it. The door was stuck. She braced a boot against the wall and pulled again. With a groan of metal, it opened. Inside was dark and cold. A single console had a small, dead screen. Jiwoo went to it. She found the main power switch. It was a big, old-fashioned lever. She pulled it down. Nothing happened. Power cells are dead, Tay said, despair in his voice. It's dead. Jiwoo didn't answer. She opened a panel below the console. Inside were 3 large, cylindrical power cells. She pulled one out. It was heavy. She looked at the ends. She took out the second one. She looked at them, then put the first one back in, but in the slot for the second one. She put the second one in the slot for the third. She left the third slot empty. She closed the panel and threw the lever again. A low hum filled the small space. Lights flickered on the console. The screen glowed to life. You can't do that, June whispered, amazed. You can't just swap them like that. You can if one cell is dead and you need to complete a circuit, she said as if it was obvious. Her fingers moved over the old keyboard. She found the emergency menu. She selected Distress Beacon. A loud, repeating ping sounded from a speaker on the roof of the hut. Ping, ping, ping. It was the most beautiful sound June had ever heard. It's a local signal, Jiwoo said, sitting back against the wall. She looked exhausted. But it's stronger than our suit comms. If they're looking, they'll hear it. They all slid down the walls, sitting on the cold floor. The beacon pinged over and over. It was hope, made into sound.in the green light of the console. June looked at Jiwoo. She had her eyes closed. Her face was pale. Her boots were coated in dust, the old scrapes and scars almost hidden. Tharsis, June said quietly. You said you learned about ice in Tharsis. Jiwoo opened her eyes. She looked at him. The other place, he said. His mouth was dry. The rubble. You said something about rubble once. In the simulation. Jiwoo was quiet for a long time. The beacon pinged. Taiko City, she said finally, the words soft. On the moon, after the dome breach. The rubble was sharp, cut through suits like paper. You learned to move slow, to not make the dust fly. June felt cold. Taiko City was a name from news reports years ago. A tragedy, a disaster zone. He had written a paper on its political fallout. You were there? I walked out, she said, and she closed her eyes again. June looked at his own clean, broken boots. He had walked from a classroom to a simulator. She had walked out of Taiko City. She had crossed the ice of Mars. And today, she had walked them out of a canyon, across a rock field, and up a dust hill. He listened to the ping of the beacon. It was a sound asking for rescue. But as he looked at her tattered boots in the green light, he realized they hadn't needed saving. They just needed someone who knew how to walk. Time passed in the small, cold hut. The only things that changed were the numbers on their suit displays. The oxygen percentages went down. The carbon dioxide warnings went up. Sumin had curled into a ball, trying to breathe less. Tae stared at the ugly patch on his suit, tapping it every few minutes as if to make sure it was still holding. June watched the green ping light flash on the console. Each flash a prayer. Jiwoo sat with her back straight against the wall. Her eyes were open, looking at nothing. She was conserving everything: energy, air, hope. Then, a new sound. A deep, thrumming vibration through the floor. A shadow passed over the small window. A rescue shuttle. It landed outside with a blast of dust that covered the view. They heard the clang of boots on the metal roof. Then the hatch was pulled open. Bright light from the shuttle poured in, making them all blink. Figures in rescue suits filled the doorway. Instructor Park was there, her face tight with worry behind her visor. Sergeant Min-soo was right behind her, his eyes scanning the dark hut, counting them. Get them out! Now! Instructor Park ordered. Strong hands pulled Sumin up first, then Tae. They were half-carried, half-walked to the waiting shuttle. June tried to stand. His legs were weak. A rescuer helped him up. As he was led out, he looked back. Jiwoo was still sitting. She was trying to push herself up, but her arms were shaking. She had used the last of her strength to get them here. Now there was nothing left. Sergeant Min-soo pushed past the others. He didn't offer her a hand. He just stood in front of her, blocking the way. He looked down. His gaze was not on her face, but on her boots, still planted on the metal floor, coated in gray asteroid dust. Instructor Park came up behind him. Sergeant, we need to evacuate. Their oxygen is critical. Min-soo didn't move. His voice was low, for the rescue channel only. They made it to the beacon. All of them. Yes, thanks to the training and the luck of a local signal, Instructor Park said, a hint of relief in her voice. We can debrief on the ring. Let's go. June was at the shuttle ramp. He was breathing the fresh, clean air from the shuttle system. The fear was leaving, replaced by a deep, embarrassing shame. He saw his friends, the other cadets from the drop, huddled inside. They were safe. They were already talking, their voices excited and scared. Then June saw one of them point out the shuttle window. He followed the finger. Outside, near the relay hut, Instructor Park was turning to go. Sergeant Minsu was still standing in front of Jiwoo. And June's friend, the one who had laughed the most about the boots, was speaking. His voice came through the open comm channel to the shuttle, loud and confused. Why is she just sitting there? And why is he looking at her feet? Did her stupid boots finally break? A few others looked. Someone gave a weak, nervous laugh. It was the sound of people returning to a safe world, making jokes about the bad dream they just left. That laugh did something to June. It was a spark on dry wood. All the fear, the exhaustion, the shame, turned into a hot, clear anger. Not at Jiwoo, at them, at himself. He stood up. He walked down the shuttle ramp, back into the dust. June, get back in, a rescuer called. He didn't listen. He walked toward the hut. He heard his friend's voice again in his helmet. What's his problem? Is he cracked from the low oxygen? June reached the group just as Instructor Park was saying, Sergeant, that's enough. We're leaving. And then June spoke. His voice was rough and loud. It wasn't the calm, command voice he practiced. It was raw. Shut up. Just shut up. Everyone went silent. They all looked at him, surprised. He was pointing a shaking finger at his friend in the shuttle. You're laughing? You're laughing at her? We would be dead. We would be frozen corpses in that canyon because my perfect plan was for a world that doesn't exist. His friend stared, his mouth open. June turned to Instructor Park, his chest heaving. She knew. She knew the pod site was bad. She knew the flats were a trap. She knew how to cross the dust and the ice and the rocks. She fixed Tay's suit with tape. She got the beacon working with dead batteries. We didn't save ourselves. She carried us. He was crying now. He couldn't stop it. The tears were hot in his eyes. And you all just keep looking at her boots. He looked down at them too. The scuffed, tattered, dirty boots. The boots that had walked every step he couldn't. The anger left him as fast as it came, leaving only a tired, hollow truth. They walked further today than you ever have. He whispered. A heavy quiet fell. The only sound was the wind from the shuttle engines. Into that quiet, Sergeant Minsu spoke. He had not moved. He had not looked away from Jiwoo's boots. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. It was the sound of stone. He finally looked up, his eyes moving from the boots to the faces of the cadets in the shuttle, to Instructor Park, and finally to June. These boots? He said. He knelt. In the dust, in front of everyone, the old sergeant went down on one knee. He reached out a gloved hand and didn't quite touch the scarred toe of Jiwoo's left boot. He just pointed. His words were clear. They were slow. They fell into the silence like stones into a deep pool. These walked through the ice canyons of Tharsis. He moved his finger to the long, white scrape on the toe. These walked through the rubble of Tycho City. His finger hovered over the worn-out sole. These walked out of the Hadley dust storms. He looked up, first at Jiwoo's exhausted, empty face, then at the stunned cadets. His voice was quiet, final, and heavier than the asteroid itself. 3 war zones. He stood up. He looked directly at June's friend, who seemed to have shrunk in his seat. Show some respect. No one laughed. No one spoke. The shame was now a living thing in the shuttle, on the ground, in the air between them. Instructor Park's face was pale. She looked from Minsu to Jiwoo, seeing her for the first time, not as a slow cadet, but as a person who had lived 3 nightmares and had the boots to prove it. Sergeant Minsu finally bent down. He did not pull Jiwoo up. He simply put an arm under her shoulders and helped her stand. She leaned on him, her legs barely working. Together, they walked the short path to the shuttle. Her boots left one last set of prints in the dust, right next to the sergeant's. No one offered to carry her. The medical bay on the Aegis ring was quiet and white. They had been checked, given clean air and fluids. Their minor injuries were treated. They were told to rest. Jiwoo sat on the edge of a cot. She had showered and wore a plain gray medical uniform. Her old clothes and boots were gone, taken away for cleaning or disposal. Her feet felt light and strange in soft slippers. The door slid open. It was June. He looked tired but clean. He stood there for a moment, unsure. "Can I come in?" he asked. Jiwoo nodded. He walked in and sat on the cot opposite hers. He didn't speak for a long time. He looked at his hands. "They're talking about it," he said finally. "Everyone. No one is laughing. They're asking questions. About Tharsis. About Tycho." Jiwoo said nothing. She just waited. "I wanted to say thank you," June said. The words seemed hard for him. "And I am sorry. For what I said. For what I thought." "You were scared," Jiwoo said. Her voice was quiet, but back to its normal flat tone. The raw exhaustion from the asteroid was fading. People say things when they are scared. It wasn't just the fear. It was before. "I thought this," he gestured around at the clean, bright station, "was all that mattered. I thought being perfect here meant you were strong. I was wrong." Jiwoo looked at him. "You are strong. You have a good mind. You kept going. That is also strength." Her saying it made his throat feel tight. He had not expected kindness. "What will you do?" he asked. "They won't make you do the basic drills anymore. Not after everything." "I will do the drills," Jiwoo said. "I need to learn the systems. The clean war. It is a thing I do not know." June almost smiled. It was a sad smile. "And we need to learn the other kind." The door opened again. It was Sergeant Minsu. He carried a small bag. "Cadet June, you should rest," the sergeant said. His voice was not unkind. June stood up. "Yes, Sergeant." He gave Jiwoo one last nod and left. Minsu placed the bag on Jiwoo's cot. "Your things. Cleaned." Jiwoo opened the bag. Inside were her folded uniform and her boots. They were clean of dust. The brown composite was scuffed but showed its true color. The long white scrape, the green lace, the worn soles, they were all still there. They had not been replaced or polished into something new. They had just been cleaned. She ran a finger over the scrape on the toe. "Hadley?" she said quietly, not looking up. "You said Hadley. No one talks about Hadley." "I was there," Sergeant Minsu said. He did not sit. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking out the viewport at the stars. "After the first storm surge, the dust there, it's like ground glass. It gets in everything. Kills the machinery. You have to walk out or you die." He paused. "I saw a pair of boots like that, walking ahead of me through the red haze. Followed them for 2 days. They saved my life too." He finally looked at her. "You don't have to tell the stories. The boots tell it for you." He turned to leave. "Sergeant," Jiwoo said. He stopped. "Thank you for what you said." "I didn't say it for you," he said, his back still to her. "I said it for them. They needed to hear it." Then he left. The next day, classes resumed. Felt strange. The same bright rooms, the same screens. But the air was different. When Jiwoo walked into the tactics room, she wore her uniform. And her boots. The sound they made on the floor was the same solid clunk. But no one turned to stare. A few cadets looked, but their looks were different. Thoughtful. Sumin gave her a small, sure smile. Instructor Park stood at the front. She began the lesson. It was about contingency planning. She talked about primary and secondary objectives. Then she stopped. She looked out at the class. The scenario on the asteroid presented an unexpected contingency. The loss of the pod and communications. Her eyes found Jiwoo.
Jadet kimo.
"From your experience, what is the first priority when the primary plan is gone?" All eyes turned to her. Jiwoo sat straight. She thought for a moment. "Find the next piece of solid ground," she said. "Just the next one. Not the end of the walk. Just the next place to put your feet. Then find the next one after that." Instructor Park considered this. She nodded slowly. "A sustainable action. One you can repeat." "Thank you, cadet." It was not in any manual. But no one argued. Later, in the free period, Jiwoo went to the small observation deck. She looked at Earth. She felt someone behind her. It was June with Tae and Sumin and a few others. "We were talking," June said, "about the rock field, how you knew which rocks were stable, and the dust slope technique. Could you show us? Not in a sim, in the Logi gym, just the basics." Jiwoo looked at them. They weren't asking for secrets. They were asking to learn. "Okay," she said. Tomorrow. A week passed. A new group of transfer cadets arrived from an orbital station near Jupiter. They were shiny and new, their uniforms crisp. Jiwoo was walking to the gym, her boots echoing in the corridor, when a group of them passed one of the new cadets. A young man with a confident look glanced down. His eyes caught on her boots. He smirked and leaned to his friend. "Looks like someone got their gear from a surplus dump," he muttered, not quite quietly enough. His friend chuckled. Jiwoo kept walking. She didn't slow down. She didn't change her expression. But from a junction ahead, Sergeant Minsu stepped out. He had heard it. He stood in the middle of the corridor, blocking the new cadet's path. He didn't look at them. He looked at Jiwoo as she walked past him. He gave her the same small, almost invisible nod he had given on her first day. Jiwoo walked on. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Behind her, she heard the new cadet's nervous silence, and then the low, steady voice of Sergeant Minsu beginning to explain something to them. She knew he wasn't talking about boots. He was talking about what they meant. She turned into the gym. June, Sumin, and a dozen others were there, some from her class, some she didn't know. They were trying to walk across a tilted, unstable platform they had built. "You're leaning too far forward," Jiwoo said, walking over. "You'll fall. Spread your weight. Feel it with your whole foot." They listened. They tried again. The sound of her boots on the gym floor was mixed with the sounds of theirs, all learning a new, solid rhythm. It was not the end of the walk. It was just the next piece of ground.